So a very common request that I get from my clients often is the ability to create some sort of report. They want to be able to query their database and then basically print those in a PDF or a CSV or something.
All right, let's try that now again. So if I create a new one, show me the drilled shafts that are built. Hey, we got the file that works. Yes, success. Oh, you like it when things work, don't you?
With my experience over the years, I've learned that the best solution that can future-proof your app is to create a reports table where you have dedicated fields that the user can use to enter various criteria that they want to filter things by. And then because you have a record that corresponds to the PDF that you're making, you have a space where you can actually show that inside the app. There's a clickable link a person can click on and see it. You can share it. There's a whole bunch of stuff because now you've got that space inside the app that corresponds to the PDF file. Greetings, salutations, and all good things in between. What's up, everyone? Matt here. Thanks for clicking on the video. I do appreciate it. If you're new, maybe you'll consider subscribing. I release educational content about how to use the AppSheet platform every Tuesday, and I live stream every Friday. All right, enough with that. Let's get to it. Okay, for the sake of explanation, I'm gonna start from the enhanced dashboard sample app that I put out a couple of weeks ago. You can watch the build video here if you want to. And for those of you who are playing along at home, there's a link down below.
I've made a copy of the sample app and I've opened up the G sheet that serves as the data source. So the first thing that we need to do in order to kick off this whole process is build the report table. So let's do that now. The first thing I'm gonna do is I'm going to create a new sheet. I'm going to give it a name. If you just double click on it, here it is, of reports. And then I got to start including the columns that I want to include.
Now the various columns that you're going to use inside your table, they're going to be different from what I'm going to use because the data points inside your system are different from mine. So you're going to have to kind of adapt what I'm doing here to fit yours. But the general idea is you just got to include one column for each different data point that you need to filter by.
So if I go to my main data collection tables, you can just look at the data points you have here. So for this one, I have a construction type, I have a timestamp, which is really just a date, I have some hours, a total cost, and then a billable status. Okay, so I'm gonna ignore the hours and total cost for now. I'm just gonna include a criterias for these other three fields. So construction type, billable status, and then some timestamp stuff. So let's start with the construction type. So I'm gonna come over here. I'm gonna prefix my column names with report. So I'll just type that in with an underscore, copy it. So it's on my clipboard really quick. So now I can be like report construction type, and then I want billable status, okay? And then I want some date stuff. So I want to say like date min, then date max, right? And so that's really kind of the basis of what I'm looking to do here. All of these are my specific criteria that I'm going to use. So like I said earlier, these are going to be different for you. So add into this group one column for each piece of criteria that you want to include. And sometimes like here, my date one, right? Sometimes the criteria that you include isn't just a single column. Sometimes it's multiple columns. There's many times when I'm building a report builder like this that I'll include several columns that allow me to do some like dependent drop down type stuff. So I can give somebody like, oh, what do you want to do? This or this? And then they do that. And then another one will pop up. Okay, well then out of those, what about this? And then of these, of those. And so you can create this nice filtering mechanism, right? That the user gets what they want into the system and it'll give them the report that they need. So I've got my primary data entry ones. Now these next few bits that I'm going to suggest are columns that I always add into my report table because they're helpful to make kind of everything work. So the first thing that you need is a place to store the actual resulting list. So the idea with this whole thing is your user goes into the form, they say, you know, I want this, I want that, I don't want to see these with this date and this date or whatever, right? And then we have a resulting list of records that meet that criteria. I want to store that because there's no sense in making the system rehash all of that all over again if we can just do the heavy lifting once and then store the value. So I'm going to provide a place to store that. So I'm going to call this report output list. All right. The next thing that I'd suggest is if you want to send these to people, it's helpful to have a space to enter the emails you want to include. So email list, right? So I'll throw in an email list. That's really kind of, oh, and one last bit, the report file. It's helpful to have a space where you can put the file link in it. And that's what gives people the ability to tap on, there's a little button that they can click and it will open the file in the app. Super helpful. The last things are really just kind of some like meta things to include. So like you need a report ID. I'd like a creation date. I'd like a creation user. Yeah, that's really about it. I'm going to include a column that I call automation trigger. And if you have the standard starting template, these are part of that. You could just drop that in and go. But so I want to know when it was created, who made it, and then I need a space that this automation trigger will make things a little easier for me. And yeah, I'm just going to kind of clean this up a little bit, and I'm going to colorize the ID so I can see it really easy. Yeah. All right. So I've got my report table. Now, the next thing we got to do is take this and add it to your app. That's a pretty straightforward process. If you know what you're doing there, you can skip forward to the next section. If not, let's do it together. So I have my app open, so I'm going to go back to it and I'm going to refresh the page, refresh the whole web browser itself. That way, yeah, see now the editor picked up that, oh, hey, you got a new table. So I'm going to add that report table into the mix. Once it's in, this is something that's really kind of a key thing that a lot of people can get stuck on skipping over. You need to go and conform the columns. So we go to columns, open up my reports, and then start looking at all of the columns and see what it did. Did it get anything right? Okay, so first thing, if you look at this one's marked as the key, not supposed to be right. This report ID down here needs to be the key. So I'm going to mark that as the key. I'm going to hide this. And if we go over here, I'm going to say I want this to be required and this needs to be unique ID. Make sure I spelled it right. Yeah, okay. All right, so that's the ID. So we got creation date, creation user. I see creation date got today. That's perfect. I can hide this. I can hide this. I can hide this. Okay, creation user. So this needs to be user email. Okay. And then let's see. So the file is a file. The email list is an email. Close. Needs to be an enum list with a base type of email with a drop down. That gives people the ability to add. Output list. Okay, this one needs to be an enum list with a base type ref. And the ref needs to be to the table that you're trying to report on. So for me, it's the construction job entries. All right. Let's see, date. Okay, and whenever you start with a date, it defaults these to today, so I need to clear those. Okay, so that, date min, billable status. All right, so this is where what I'm going to do is I'm going to open this. I'm going to leave it as a text. I'm going to come in here to the valid if, open this, and then I'm going to go back to my data source, and I'm going to grab the name of my primary table, drop it in here. I'm going to go back here and I'm going to grab the name of the construction type column. Grab the column name and drop it inside quote square brackets here. and that will create a list of all of the construction types. The one thing I will do is I'll wrap this in a sort so that it puts them all in alphabetical order. And since this formula lives inside the valid if space, since this is happening, it will automatically uniqueify the resulting list that I'm going to get out of this, so that I don't have to go through and wrap unique around this. I could if I wanted, don't have to. But with that, that's going to give me a list of all the different, oh, I put that in the wrong spot. This needs to go into the construction type space. My bad. And I don't want to make that required. The billable status needs to be basically the same thing, but what I'll do is I'll come back here and change the column that I'm using to the billable status column. Just like that. Easy way to get every value in the table inside the list. Okay, now I saved, so it propagates through the system. Now I want to go and look at what this looks like. So I'm going to make a view for it really quick. I'll leave it as a table view. I'll call it reports. I'll save it so it propagates. Okay. Now, if we make one of these, we can see we've got a drop down for, all of the construction types. Awesome. All right, but that's an enum. That's not what I want. I want an enum list for this. Yeah. So I can't leave the type as a text. I need to change this to enum list with a base type of text, the drop-down entry. And I need to do that for, now, billable status. Well, yeah, I want to be able to select multiple billable statuses. So I need to do the same thing over there too. The base type text, a drop-down entry. For this one, there's only 2 options, so I'll make this buttons. But this construction type, you see how many there are? I don't want to make those buttons. This needs to be this nice, concise thing. So I can come in here and be like, do. I want to see those. I want to see the ones that are billed. And then, right, I've got a date min and a date max. Cool. Okay, so if we save this, so we've gotten to a point now where all of our data entry fields work. So now we've got to do the heavy lifting part. Now is the time where we got to create that select statement, the actual query of our database that says, cool, go over there, take all of these fields that I just said with all these data points and find me all the records that match. Let's do that now. So the place we're going to put this formula is inside the report output list. That's the space where it's going to live, and we're going to put this inside of its app formula. And the thing is, select, then go get the name of the table you're selecting from. Drop it there. Then get the name of the ID column. So time log ID in my case, put it in square brackets, hit a comma and a space, and then start an and then drop down to a new line. Whenever I'm working on a formula where there's a whole bunch of different lines, specifically like ands and ors and things, I find it's really helpful to split your individual branches for your and statement on their own line. It makes it really clear where one stops and another one begins, which helps with debugging and everything. So anyways, so the thing we're doing here is we're building a giant and statement where we need to take into consideration the construction type, the billable status, the date min, and the date max. So date min, date max. There we go. Okay, now that I've got the 4 columns that I need to deal with, the thing that I can do now is I can basically create a framework that I need to input for each of these different branches inside the and statement. So I need to build this if statement. So if is not blank, whatever, then some column in the other table needs to equal this row dot whatever. Otherwise, true. That is the basic framework that I need to use for each of these branches. What I'm essentially saying is I need to take each one of these and I need to duplicate this whole section up here for each one of those, inputting the individual column name in the spaces where it's supposed to go. So what I do is I have 4 columns I need to do, so I'll copy this framework, copy it, and I'll come down here and be like 2, 3, 4. And then the 4th one is the last one, so it doesn't need a comma, and I'll come back here and close my and then close my select. Okay, now all I'm gonna do is I'm gonna move these up into their respective places. So like I'm gonna come here, I'm gonna cut this, I'm gonna put it inside these 2 spots. So if is not blank, the construction type, then the whatever column equals this row's report construction type, right? Same thing for billable status. If that's not blank, then it has to equal this row's that. Same thing here, this to there. Same thing here, this to there. Okay, so the next part is I've got to take these little placeholders that I put inside here, and I need to go find the corresponding columns inside the actual table. So in this case, it's the construction job entries, and go get the actual name of the column in that table that matches the type, the criteria that I'm currently working on, right? So like this first one is the construction type. So I'll go back to my data source, copy the name of the construction type column, and then come here and put it in the placeholder. Same thing for billable status. Same thing for the date, right? So this is the timestamp one, and this one actually fits for both of these. But since I'm dealing with a date here, I really need to change my operator. I can't just do equal. It needs to be, so we're talking about the min, so it needs to be equal to or greater than, right? And then the max needs to be equal to or less than. I think I have those backwards. Yeah, I think I have to do it that way. All right, so you can see we have a type problem. So yep, that's because these up here aren't single values, they're lists of values. So what I really need to do is I just need to change this equal sign. I need to change the equality into a list. My bad, should have started with that. It's all right. So it's just changing this to an in, and then we go to the other side of construction type, get rid of the equal, put a comma, go to the end over here, and put in a closing parenthesis. We got to do that for construction type. We need to do that for billable status as well, since this is also a list. So in, go to the other side, drop a comma, get rid of the equal sign, go to the end, and close it. What this formula is going to do is it's going to go to the construction job entries table, look through all of the records, and based on the criteria that the user has entered into the reports form, find all of the records that match that criteria. It's then going to take that and save that inside this column right here, giving us an easy way to call that value back. And we can test this out and see what it looks like. So as you can see, this report list is really big right now. So this has literally got every single record in that list. But as soon as I do this build, right? Okay, now it dropped down and it's a whole lot less. And then if I come in here and I say, I only want to see these 2 things. Yeah, see, it gets even less. And in this way, this is how you build a report builder. I'm essentially done with this little front end, which is I need to create a way for the user to input what they want to see, and then I need to get the actual output that is the resultant list. All right, now that we've got this output list, let's create a way to look at that inside the app as like a live output. The way you do this is really simple. This output list contains the list of records, but it's an enum list column type, so we can't view them the way that we want. The way that you solve this is you create a new virtual column, come inside here. The formula is literally just the name of the column in square brackets. This essentially copies the value from the one place to the next. But since this is a virtual column, you can see AppSheet set the type to a list with a reference to the whatever. It's a root list, right? It's a root list. So this is going to give you that ability to see the records in the inline view like you'd want to see it. So this could be report display. I don't think I'll put report output display. Hit save, hit done. Let's see what this looks like. So if I cancel and I go and I start a new report, we can see, so if I say I only want to see the asphalt pavings that are unbilled between the dates of, this is all 2021 data of, yep, February and 02, or let's do, yeah, 31, 2021. And then like, I'll make this a 1. Right? So give me everything for February that's unbilled for asphalt paving. And that's all of these records. And if I look down here, I see the actual output now in a format that's more familiar for us inside the AppSheet world, where like I can click on the record and get the actual results. Now that I've got that in the system and it's all ready to go, the next thing to do is to generate a template that'll allow me to print all of this data inside of a PDF. So the easiest way to do this is to make use of AppSheet's inbuilt ability to create a template for you, and that's in automation. So I go to automation, make a new bot. This is going to be called make or update report. The event is going to be triggered. The event type will be a data change. So the condition is adds and updates on the reports table, where the condition is that the, where's it at? Automation trigger equals go. I'm gonna save that. All right, the process I want to do is I want to make or update file. Okay. Thing I'm going to do is I'm going to run a task. I'm going to create a custom task that is create a new file on the reports table of the PDF type. And this is where the magic that I was talking about comes into play. So you can see here, there's this button that I can press that'll allow me to create a template. Tap that. And if you just wait for it to finish, it's putting together a template for you right now inside your Google Drive. And now that it's done, if you click the view button, you can see what it did. And you can see in here, we've got, the magic is done for us. All we've got to do now is like conform this so that it looks the way that we want it to be. So the first thing that I'm going to do for this template here is I'm going to go through and get rid of all of the other fields inside of it that I don't want. So for instance, I don't need to show the file list or the email or the output list. I don't need to see any of those. I'm going to drop this output display. This is the thing that I need to put inside a table. But like these up here, you could include these if you wanted. I generally get rid of them because they're not really that necessary. You know what I mean? Some people like to be able to see the criteria like this. I don't know, whatever. It's entirely up to you what you want to leave in this little upper part, as well as like, what do you want to include as like a header up here, and what sort of details do you want up there? I'm just gonna largely leave this just as it is. I will come up here. I guess I will make use of this header part. I don't want that, but I'll make use of this one. All right, the important part. So the important thing we gotta do, right? The thing that actually makes this do what we really want it to do is we gotta create a start expression and put it inside a table. So the first thing that we do is build the table that you want. So the way that I do this is I'll go back to my AppSheet app and I'll look at the table, the column list of the columns that I'm actually going to be reporting on. And I'll see, well, what do I actually want to show? Do you know what I mean? Like, what do I want to see inside my table? Sometimes the best thing to do is to go and look at your table that you use inside the app. Like, what are you displaying down here? Because this is basically what I want to recreate in that other thing over there. You know what I mean? So like I've got like the date, the cost, the billing status, and the hours. Okay, so there's what, 1, 2, 3, 4. So I'll come back to my template, go up to the insert, to the table, and insert 2 by 4, 4 by 2, however you want to look at it. Now, the idea is, right, this top row will be my headers. This bottom row will be the actual data that I want to do. And then that row will repeat for each row in the table. So my headers, I like to format my headers. So like I like to give them like at least a different background and maybe make the text bold, but at least a different background. You know what I mean? And so let's go back to my app sheet and see what was it? Date, cost, billing status, hours. So date, cost, billing status, hours. All right, now to the meat and potatoes. Inside each one of these, put in a template space holder. So this is just what I like to throw this in just for fun, just because it's a simple placeholder and I know I got to replace the little thing in the middle. But you need one of those for each of the columns. So like I'll put that here, here, and here. Okay, so the next thing you got to do is input the actual names of the columns from your actual data table. So the table that we're printing these records from, go get the names of the columns for each one of these columns and put them in the placeholder. So like my date, if I go back to my report table, the date is really this time log timestamp. So I will copy this, come here, and put it there. Same thing for cost. Come back here, find my cost column, copy that, put it here, paste. Billing status, come back here, get my billing status, put it here. Get my hours, there it is, hours. Okay, now that we've got all of the actual column placeholders in where they're supposed to be, the next thing I like to do is go and add another row into your table here. And really the purpose for this is you can go and get like some sample data, and then that gives you the ability to adjust your columns for how wide they need to be. For instance, like this date column here doesn't need to be that big. So if I insert a row below and like I just insert a date, like the biggest date that there is, right? 12/31. Okay, well I know I can shrink this all the way back there and it'll be all right. Same thing for like cost. If I go to my app and I look at like some of these values here, if I clear all my filters and then sort by descending, so the highest number in the system is, excuse me. So the highest number in my system is 3 digits and 2 decimals. So I can go, you know, number 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, and then I can make this a whole lot smaller. Same thing for like hours. I know hours is going to be really small, so I can do that and leave billing status, this giant thing in the middle, and call it good. So now I just get rid of this row, and now everything is as it should be. The last thing that I need to do is I need to put in the start template placeholder bits that makes all this sort of magic work. So there's 2 parts. I'll just type them out down here. So there is a start, and then I'm just going to put a placeholder for there, and there is an end, end, right? Okay, the start, what I'm going to do is it's this right here. This is the thing that I want. I want it to just literally run through everything that we have in that column. So if I go back to my AppSheet app and we look at it, if if we go to a report, we look at the report, right? This output display is this. So like this is what it's going to output as. So this start expression, this needs to go at the very front of everything. In the end, needs to go at the very end of the row. And there you go. Get rid of this little guy down here. That is the basics of my report. If I now test this, we should be able to see what does this actually look like when it's ran through the system. So the first thing we should do is validate that it's going to work. So I'm going to go back to my automation. I'm going to go back here and I'm going to save and verify data. So this is going to run through and it's going to look at this template that it made and make sure that everything that I did was okay. So it came back as a green state. There's no errors. If there was a problem, this would probably be highlighted in red, or at least the info would. And you'd have to come back here and maybe you like forgot a caret or something. Do you know what I mean? Happens. Before we move on and test this, there's one last thing that I want to cover, and that's folderization. So when you have AppSheet create a document, if you're using Google Drive as your data source, you can actually have AppSheet create a folder system as it's creating the files inside your drive. This is especially helpful for if you've got multiple different companies with multiple different projects, and you need a way to create this nested hierarchy of folders inside your Google Drive so things are organized in a logical way. AppSheet can do that, and it'll do it based on the values that are actually used inside the records itself. So that's what I want to set up here. So what I'll do is I'll come down here in my custom task, that's the create a file, right? I'll come down here to the folder. So if I open this, this is where I can create a string. So it's like a giant concatenate that will create the folder path that I want to store this file in. And so like the thing that I really kind of want to do is I want to organize these by date. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start a concatenate. Okay. And so the first bit that I want is I want to start with the years, right? And so I've got like a date min, date max. So I could just pick one of these and just use the one. So I'm just going to use the date min. You could, put these both into a list and extract the lowest one out, I guess, if you wanted. I'm just going to go with the min because usually they're going to be generally the same. So the idea then is, so I want the year of this. So literally just year, just like that. That'll give me the year for whatever date's inside that. Then I want to go forward into maybe a construction type. So in order to switch from one folder to the next, you have to put a / inside the formula. So in here in the concatenate, oops, literally like that, literally a quote in a / in quotes. Next, I'm going to do like the construction type, and that's where I'm going to call it good. You could continue this sort of thing where you just keep adding in more layers and more layers and more layers, each layer of folders separated by another /. And you can get really complicated and really crazy with this. You can create if statements inside here where you have entire branches of subfolders that are conditional based on other things. Like, yeah, you can get nuts inside here. But I'm going to leave this basically like that because that's a good root thing. And then the name prefix, right? So you could come up with something else. I'm going to leave this like this, and it's going to put a timestamp on here. I guess I'm going to get rid of AppSheet doc, and I'll say report output, right? And then it'll put like a timestamp on here, making it a unique file name. All right, so let's test this out. So in order to test this, we've got to actually install the triggering system. So I put the bits and pieces in place in the beginning, but skipped over putting them all actual in place. So let's put them there now. So if we go back to our automation, if we look at our bot, we go to the trigger event. I just said triggered, and then I put into the condition where the automation trigger equals go. Okay, so automation triggers a column on the report table that I left there. If we go and we look at that, so if we look at reports, so if we look at this column, you can see the automation trigger is literally just a text type column that I leave blank. This is a really handy thing that you can do, and I actually include this in every single one of my tables. I actually have 3 columns that I include. Well, I use a standard starting template, but that's another thing. This is actually an extremely helpful thing that you can include inside your system, and it gives you a way where you can manually trigger your bots, and there's no confusion about when it should happen and when it shouldn't happen. Like, it's 100% straightforward. This is why I like why I've settled on this as my preferred method. So I have an automation trigger column in the table that I want to do something on. It's a text type and I hide it. Okay, so that's part 1. Part 2 is I need a couple of behaviors to put a flag inside that column and then clear it. So first part, make an action on the report table that sets the automation trigger to whatever word you want to use. Now, I use the word go for this first one. This is something where you'd come up with your own, right? So this is going to be set auto trigger reports go. I'm going to hide this. I do not need to see it. Then I need a corresponding action to this, one to clear the trigger. So the easiest way is just copy this, come up here, just change the name a little bit, clear auto trigger reports, and then just change this from the go to a blank value like that. Done. Now that I have my 2 actions, I need to configure the system to use those. First thing I need to do is inside my automation in the bot, above the task where I create the file, above it, I need to insert a clear trigger. And this is where I'm going to run a data action where I'm going to clear the trigger. That clears the trigger, obviously. The easiest way to trigger this now, right, is so I have to set this value of go to the automation trigger column. The easiest way to do this is you can set it inside the initial value here. So if I go to automation trigger and I go to the initial value and I set this as go, this will trigger it when they first create the record, and then that automation will run. It will clear the trigger and make the file. Okay. After that, then if I want to give the users the ability to manually trigger this, say they want to re-update the file or something, right? Then you got to give them a button that they can push that will set that trigger into that column. Now you already created that in the beginning. It's this set one. So I could just make this visible and give this like a nice file, right? And be like, make update file. Yep. And now check it. If I push this, it put that value into the thing, and right now you see how it's taken so long for that to go? That's because it was making a file. And if I go and look in my Google Drive, we can find, yep, see, it created a new folder for the year. It created a new folder for the type, which I need to address. That's not what I need to do, but you see it did what it did. And then here's the actual report. And if I look at this, here's the actual report. And so you can see there's little things that I'd want to do. Like obviously I need to make the date column a little bit wider, and there's a few other things that I could do to kind of spruce it up and make it look nicer, but you can see it's generally working, which is exactly what we were looking for, and we're at a good point right now. The next thing that I want to do is I want to make it to where once the file is created, I want people to be able to click on a link inside the app to get to the file that was made. So in order to do that, you've got to go through and drop a link to this file right here inside your app in a place in that file column that we included on the report table. So let's go through and do that right now. So go back here to my automation. Yep. And what I need to do is I need to create another task after the one where I make the file. So first I clear the trigger, then I make the file, then I need to set the file link. The thing we're going to do is we are going to run a data action, and we can leave it as a custom action. We're going to set row values, and the column that we want to set is the file. And the value that we want to set this to is a combination of things that you've already entered into your system. So you just got to go get them and combine them together with some little extra bits. First, go get the file path, the folder path. All of these things live inside this automation right here. You just got to go into this, and then you got to go back to this one and insert the little bits that you picked out. So like I'll go here, I'll scroll down to the folder path, come into here, copy everything, then go back down here, go into the formula space and drop what I copied. Save it, go back to the file creation task and get the name of the file. Okay, now this is where we've got to kind of stop and take a side tangent. We can't do what we're going to do this way. The problem is that we've left the file name, we've left the timestamp toggle turned on, so it's applying a timestamp to the file that's created. So the next time that it runs, it's going to change the timestamp because it includes seconds and things. So what we have to do is we have to change the file name formula so that we're actually manually telling the system what we want it to be. And to be honest with you, the easiest way to do this is to literally put a space inside the table, in the report table, to record the name of the file. Like this is a space where we'll put a formula that will blah, 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 and create a name, and then the person can change it if they want. Problems solved. So let's add a column. We got to open up our data source. Go to the reports table, add in a new column, and give it a name, report name. Wait for it to save. Back to your AppSheet app, go to the right table and regenerate the column structure. Now that we got a space for the name, I'm going to come inside here. I'm going to change this to just a regular text. I'm going to make it required. And I'm going to create an initial value that will be a concatenate of some stuff. Okay, so we got to come up with a formula that will be the name of our file. And this is really depends on the data that you're using in your system. I'm using a bunch of sample data that's nothing, so it's completely meaningless. So the name that I'm going to come up with is completely meaningless. Generally, I try and make my names of my files make sense. Like for what we're doing here, like if this was a real thing, there'd probably be a client associated with these construction records. So like the name of the file would be the client name dash the project name dash something else, right? You know what I mean? Like I would take the details from the file, from whatever the report is that we're building, and I would somehow include that inside the file name. But since I'm building, a generic whatever that doesn't really fit anything, what I'm going to do instead is I'm just going to do an auto incrementing number, which I know is something a lot of people want to know how to do. This is how you do it. So the thing I'll do is I need to come up with the name. So it's a giant concatenate. So concatenate, right? And so then I'm just going to say report output, and I'll put a hashtag for the number. And then we'll come down here and we'll say count. And then I go and I got to get the name of the table that I want to count records in, which is my report table. So copy the name of the table, drop it in here, come back over here, copy the name of the ID for the report table, put it in square brackets, close your count, close your concatenate. And now every time I create a report, it's going to have an auto incrementing number. So the first one will be report output number 1, and then report output number 2, and number 3, and number 4, and number 5. So this works as long as you don't delete any of the reports that are already in the system. If you do that, then you got to change the formula in here to account for the fact that you've already done that. And the way that I usually do that is I would include a specific column inside here that actually holds the number that this report is. So like this is the report name, it's got some text and the number put together. I would have another field that just straight up holds the number, because this way you can have a formula inside there that says, cool, start at 1, and then if there's more than 1, then go to the reports table, give me the max number that exists in the tickets, for like the ticket number, and plus 1 to it. But I'm going to leave it like this for now, just because simplicity's sake. Now that I've got a column that holds the name that I want to use for the file, I need to go back to my automation and configure the system to use this column. So I'm going to copy the name of this column and go back to my automation, go back to my file creation task, and in the name, file name prefix, so in here, this is where I'm going to put in square brackets that column name. I'm going to hit save, and then I'm going to turn off the timestamp. This is important. This is what makes it so that the system doesn't create a new file every time, and instead it like looks for the file if it's already there and then updates it, or it makes it if it doesn't exist. So that's all I need to do for this one. The last thing I need to do is go and finish the file link. So I'm going to come in here, copy this file name formula, go to my set file link task, go to the formula where I'm setting the report file, and in here I need to finish this. Okay, so this is the formula for the folder, right? So I need to continue this. I need to tell that that's the last folder, and then there we go. Put the report name down here, or whatever formula you have that creates your file name. Maybe you've got some concatenate that's got some whole lot of whatever's going on. You just drop that here. And last thing, can't forget this part. After the file name, you also have to include the file type. So the suffix that it's got, the file type, the extension, that's what I was looking for. So this is .pdf. And with that, now when I make a file, it's going to drop a link to the correct file inside the actual bit. So, all right, let's try that now again. So if I create a new one, show me the drilled shafts that are built. If I push that to the cloud, all right, if we look at the file, hey, we got the file that works. Yes, success. Oh, you like it when things work, don't you? Okay, so again, yeah, now it's just a matter of going through and like conforming this template to make it look nicer, you know, and this is really kind of a never-ending thing. You can always kind of go in and fiddle with things and add some graphics and some colors and some border shading and some this and some that and whatever. But generally at this point, you've got the core put into your system where your users can start a report record, input the various criteria that they want, and then create the file and see the file inside the system. The last remaining bits to do for this, right, is to include a way where I can specify the email list that I want people to send this to, and then subsequently send that to those emails. I'm not going to do that in this video. This video is already way too long. I appreciate you sticking by and sticking with it. I really do. Give it a like if you will. In the next video and a follow-up to this, I will have some tips and tricks on how to formulate your workflow templates, what you can do, what you can't do, just generally all of the little things that I found over the years.
That's it. That's all I got. Thanks everyone for watching. I do appreciate it. If you like this sort of content, please give the video a like. Maybe you'll consider subscribing. If you really want to show your support, you can head on over to patreon.com/multitech. I've got a bunch of goodies over there that'll help you become a ninja. All right, everybody. See you in the community.